This morning we're going to be talking about learning and processing our own stories. And before we begin, I want to acknowledge that some really hateful and tragic events happened this weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia. If you haven't seen the news, hundreds of neo-Nazis and white supremacists gathered in Charlottesville using the removal of a Confederate statue as an excuse to exhibit their violence. They carried torches. The people of Charlottesville, led by young people, students, and people of color, turned out to stand peacefully against this display of hate. And a person now in custody plowed a car directly into the crowd of peaceful counter-protesters, killing at least one and injuring at least 19 others. I am surprised and appalled by this brash and unrepentant white supremacy that is rearing its ugly head once again. And I know that my siblings of color are not so surprised. And that points to the difference of experience that our skin colors have afforded us in this world. In the midst of my heartbreak and outrage, though, I also want to lift up the thousands of activists, including hundreds of clergy from all faiths, who showed up in Charlottesville yesterday to counter this message of hate. Among them was our newly elected UUA president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. And that was exactly where she needed to be, to represent where Unitarian Universalists stand on white supremacy. So thank you to Susan and to my other colleagues who represented us. And we really feel called to do something here. And so this is just unfolding now. Thank you to our Social Action Committee and our Racial Justice Provincetown group for thinking with me about this. And we've decided to hold a vigil on our lawn tomorrow night at 6 p.m. You're the first to learn about this, so we will be getting the word out and inviting the other churches in town and all the townspeople to join us. But we really feel like we need to stand against these messages of hate. I also want to say that what happened in Charlottesville and our response to it are not separate from today's topic of learning, processing, and sharing our personal stories. If anything, it adds urgency to it. Yolo Akili is a Black author and educator in areas of intimate partner violence, LGBTQ issues, and HIV/AIDS in DC. He writes, "Remember, oppression thrives off isolation. Connection is the only thing that can save us. Remember, oppression thrives on superficiality. Honesty about our struggles is key to our liberation. Remember, your story can help save someone's life. Your silence contributes to someone else's struggle. Speak so we can all be free. Love so we can all be liberated. The moment is now. We need you." Spirit of life, we offer our thoughts, prayers, and intentions this morning to that which is both within and beyond ourselves, to that which heals, inspires, creates, comforts, challenges. To the altar of life, we offer gratitude for all those who stand up to hatred and injustice, who join hands with people different than themselves to strengthen their own messages of love. We offer the joy of being part of a community of faith this morning, and also the nervousness, shyness, and doubts we have about being here. We offer all our questions, yearning, seeking, fears. We offer our stories, our full stories still unfolding. We offer candles of joy and of sorrow, songs of celebration and longing. We ask for courage, stamina, and hope in our own justice seeking. We ask for help in accessing the deep reserves of healing, forgiveness, and love that we carry within ourselves. We ask for a glimmer of light in those dark moments just before dawn. We ask for the strength to be our full selves and the wisdom to be present to this moment, here and now. Amen. Our reading this morning is by Nancy Schaefer from Instructions in Joy. This making of a whole self takes such a very long time. Pieces are not sequential, nor our supplies. We work here, then there, hold up tattered fabric to the light, sew past dark intent, use all our thread. Sleeves may come before length, buttons before a rounded neck. We sew at what most needs us, and as it asks, so again. The self is not one thing once made unaltered, not midnight task alone, not after other work. It's everything we come upon, make ours. All this fitting of what once was and has become. Now is the time. Thank you. Sometimes they'll keep the clothing, the strips of shirt or pants that remain. They'll stare at a shredded, broad-brimmed straw hat, trying to stitch together some of what happened to them. Then they'll tell and retell their story at family gatherings and online, sharing pictures and news reports of other survivors. Only by piecing together the bystander reports, the singed clothing, and the burnt skin can survivors start to construct their own picture of the possible trajectory of the electrical current, one that can approach 200 million volts and travel at 1/3 the speed of light. You have to piece together the story of what happened to you when you have been struck by lightning. In this way, Jamie Santana's family have pieced together what happened one Saturday afternoon in April 2016. Jamie had been horseback riding with his brother-in-law and 2 friends in the mountains behind their home outside of Phoenix. Dark clouds had formed, heading in their direction, so the group had started back. They had nearly reached the house when it happened. The riders had witnessed quite a bit of lightning as they neared the house, enough that they had commented on the dramatic zigzags across the distant sky. But scarcely a drop of rain had fallen as they approached the horse corrals. Jamie's brother-in-law, Alejandro, doesn't think he was knocked out for very long. When he regained consciousness, he was lying face down on the ground, sore all over. His horse was gone. The 2 other riders appeared shaken but unharmed. Alejandro went looking for Jamie, who he found on the other side of his fallen horse. I saw smoke coming up, says Alejandro. That's when I got scared. Flames were coming off of Jamie's chest. 3 times, Alejandro beat the flames with his hands. 3 times, they reignited. It wasn't until later, after a neighbor had come running to help and immediately began administering CPR, that they began to realize what had happened. Jamie had been struck by lightning. Justin Gouger was struck by lightning while fishing for trout at a lake near Flagstaff. Even now, some 3 years later, when a storm moves in, the flickering flashes of light approaching, Justin seeks comfort in his bathroom closet, monitoring the storm's progress on his phone. An avid fisherman, Justin had initially been elated when the rain started that August afternoon. Fish are more likely to bite when it's raining, he told his wife, Rachel. But as the rain picked up, becoming stronger and then turning into hail, Rachel and the kids headed for the truck. As the pellets grew larger, approaching golf ball size, Justin too gave up, grabbed a nearby folding canvas chair, and turned to head for the truck. A crashing boom, a jolting, excruciating pain. I saw a white light surrounding my body, Justin says. It was like I was in a bubble. Everything was slow motion. I felt like I was in a bubble forever. A couple huddling under a nearby tree ran to Justin's assistance. Later, they told him that he was still clutching the chair. His body was smoking, the chair burnt along one edge. Of every 10 people hit by lightning, 9 will survive to tell the tale. But they often suffer a variety of short and long-term effects. The list is lengthy and daunting. Cardiac arrest, confusion, seizures, muscle aches, and chronic pain. And there are emotional effects too. And these latter are healed only by learning and telling their story. Many survivors have a story that they want and need to share. In fact, there's a support group that has formed with online and in-person gatherings called Lightning, Strike, and Electric Shock Survivors International. They swap tales of their brush with nature's brutal force. They share resources for coping with the headaches, memory troubles, insomnia, and other effects of a lightning strike. The changes in personality and mood that survivors experience, sometimes with severe bouts of depression as well, can strain families and marriages, sometimes to breaking point. It's hard to see that the person has been changed by their experience because they often show no signs on the outside. Justin, who regained motion in his legs within 5 hours of being struck, finally sought out help last year at the Mayo Clinic for his cognitive frustrations. In Arizona, Jamie Santana survived the immediate lightning strike, but still suffers from its impact. After 5 months of treatment and rehabilitation, he finally returned home, but he still can't walk. The doctors have described some of Jamie's nerves as still dormant, something that they hope time and rehabilitation will mend. The family's beloved horse, Pelucha, did not survive. It's probable that this 1,500-pound horse absorbed a good portion of the lightning that nearly killed his rider. Lightning begins high up in the clouds, sometimes 25,000 feet above the Earth's surface. As it descends toward the ground, the electricity is searching for something to connect with. It goes for the most convenient thing to hit: trees, utility poles, buildings, and occasionally people. To best avoid a lightning strike, you should follow the old adage, when thunder roars, go indoors. But if that's not an option, you should avoid mountain peaks, trees, or any body of water. Look for a ravine, experts say. Spread out your group to reduce the risk of multiple injuries. Don't lie down, but crouch down, keeping the feet close together. Good to know. When I first read about Jamie and Justin and the 2,000 members of the lightning strike survivor support group, I was fascinated. What fascinated me most was the thought of survivors trying to piece together their own stories using the objects before them. A straw hat with a hole in the top, hiking boots with burn marks through each sole, the various accounts of people nearby. It reminded me of flipping through an old family photo album, trying to remember pieces of my childhood, trying to piece together my own story from fractured memories. Have you ever had a conversation with a sibling about a memory that you hold from childhood? Now, maybe your sibling's version corroborates exactly what you remember, and you can bond over the shared memory. But maybe your sibling's version is really different than yours, because one of you was older and remembered differently, or simply because we each experience the world uniquely. Sometimes my sister and I piece together memories like a puzzle, each of us adding a detail here, a name there. Right now I'm taking a class which involves writing about my past. The writing prompts have me thinking about things I hadn't thought of in years. A walk down memory lane, but with an adult's understanding. I am literally rewriting history as I remember it. Dorothy Gallagher once said, "The writer's business is to find the shape in unruly life and to serve her story." On Friday night, I had the pleasure of hearing Alison Bechdel speak in Wellfleet. Some of you were there. Alison is the cartoonist who created the long-running comic strip Dykes to Watch Out For, and who wrote and illustrated the graphic memoirs Fun Home and Are You My Mother? You might have seen or heard of the Broadway play that was created from her story called Fun Home. In her talk, Alison told us about journaling and then drawing comics as a way to process her own life story. Turning moments of her life into a drawing was a way for her to get them safely out of her head. Stringing them together into comic strips was a way for her to find order and meaning out of all those different moments. Alison's family faced some hard things in her growing up years, including her father's suicide. And hers was not a family that talked about what was happening or who processed feelings well. Thankfully, Alison had her drawings to help her through. It was not until she was a grown woman and her therapist asked her, "Are you sometimes mad at your father for committing suicide?" that she was able to trace back her story and see this theme and how it had played out throughout her life. Tig Notaro is another fascinating woman who is processing her life through her art. She is a comedian, and events from her own life are often fodder for her stand-up routines. Even topics like breast cancer, her own breast cancer, or the death of her mother make their way into her comedy. After Tig's mother died, the hospital mailed her mother a customer satisfaction survey. "How was your experience with us?" it asked. "Not very good," Tig joked. "I died." And writing and telling this joke to an audience has helped Tig to process her mother's death. Some of you might know Tig's darkly comedic memoir series available on Netflix called One Mississippi. In it, she is literally reenacting her life, but with actors playing the characters of her mother, brother, stepfather, and various girlfriends. Not only is it a really good show, but it's also so interesting to see how she, like Alison, is able to use her art as a way to learn, process, and tell her own story. So much has happened to us in our lives. So many memories, so many events, people, places, things. A lot of happy memories, some really hard ones. Some of us have suffered traumas that we rarely have the courage or space to talk about. Some of us require the safety of a therapist's office, even to begin to remember. And all of that, the good and the bad, the adventures and the boredom, the milestones and the everyday, it's all part of our story. It's an interesting exercise to look back, to draw connections between pieces of our tale. A writing prompt asks, how were decisions made in your home growing up? Another says, describe a challenge and how you handled it. I can imagine other assignments. Draw a picture of you conquering a fear, or write a joke about a misunderstanding that has occurred between you and a friend. I picture Justin talking to Charlotte Huff, the journalist who captured his story. He sits on his sofa at home and draws one hand across his back, tracing the path of his burns. They begin near his right shoulder and extend diagonally across his torso, and then continue along the outside of each leg. He leaves the couch and returns holding his hiking boots, tipping them to show several burn marks on the interior. Those dark, roundish spots line up with the singed area on the socks he was wearing and with the coin-sized burns he had on both feet. Justin's best guess, based on reports from the nearby couple, along with the wound in his right shoulder, is that the lightning hit his upper body and then exited through his feet. I picture Justin sitting there, hand moving slowly across his body. What would it be like if we each traced our own story? Not through scars and burns, but through memories, taking time with each one, seeing how, this led to that. Do you think this dates back to that other thing? I don't remember it that way, but other people do. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle of our two memories. What would it be like if we each traced our own story and owned all the pieces of it? Brené Brown says, when we deny our stories, they define us. When we own our stories, we get to write a brave new ending. This making of a whole self takes such a very long time. Slowly, we piece together the story of our own unfolding. When we're feeling brave enough to intentionally process things from our past, maybe we can utilize the same kinds of questions that come up staring at a charred straw hat. Maybe we can wonder with gentle curiosity, what exactly happened here? What were the forces beyond our control, like lightning, like a father's suicide, like cancer? What were the choices that we made, good or bad, like taking shelter under a tree, which have contributed to what has happened to us? Who else was around that changed the course of events? A neighbor who gave CPR? A teacher who took an interest in us? A partner or friend who offered companionship? Where does it hurt? And sometimes the very questions that we choose to ask about the past can start to shape our future. Jamie's family has spent a lot of time thinking about the lightning strike that he survived. They've asked a lot of questions about it. But one question that they've stopped asking is, why? Why did lightning catch Jamie in its crosshairs that April afternoon? We're never going to be able to answer why, Jamie's sister Sarah says. So now it's time for Jamie to start thinking about what's next with the new life that he's been given. The family is planning a party with a mariachi band to celebrate Jamie's first year of life moving forward. And here's my favorite part of their story. When Jamie's family returned home from the hospital, the day after the lightning strike, his brother-in-law called to his wife Sarah from the backyard, "Come, see this." On the railing of the round pen where they work the horses, adjacent to their corrals, they saw a peacock, his colorful feathers flowing out behind him. Outside of a zoo, they had never seen a peacock in Arizona before. They decided to look up what the bird symbolizes. The answer made them all catch their breath. A peacock, renewal, resurrection, immortality. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.